Hey there, this is Dennis Anyone with Dennis Hensley. It's a podcast about making things up and making things happen. I think creative people and art make life worth living, make the tough times bearable, and I have that proven over and over again as we go through this very strange time. So today my guest is a writer, a poet, actually. It's my friend Stephen Rains, who's been on the podcast before. He has a new book of poetry out called Outliving Michael, and it's a kind of memoir about a friend of his named Michael Church, who had a big impact on his life. And we talk about who Michael was and all about the different things that he gave to Stephen. And Stephen reads some of his poems. Maybe we get a little teary. It's that kind of podcast. But I love the book so much, and so I loved this conversation with Stephen. But before we get to that, I want to get a plug-in for my new party game that I'm hoping to come out with by the end of the year. Definitely get it into people's hands by Christmas. It's called Search Party, and the premise is this. Like, a card is played that has a turn of phrase on it, like the elephant in the room or tight squeeze, and then the players have a minute to find an image on their phone using Google Images or whatever search engine you want to satisfy that prompt, and then the person who played the card gets to pick their favorite. So it's very straightforward. It's very fun. My goal is to get 150 pre-orders by November 15th. That'll get us over the hump to help pay for the printing. And I made a big plea for it last week. I talked about using my birthday as kind of an opportunity to ask people in a way that I wasn't super comfortable with, but the response has been really good, and so I'm very encouraged. But we're still trying to get to that 150 games ordered mark. So if you want to support the cause and have something to look forward to, a game in your hands by Christmas, go to youdon'tknowmylife.com/searchparty, and you can see a little more about it there. You can pre-order your game. And I appreciate the support. When I set out to do it, I thought, is this the right year to try to do this? And then I thought, no, people need things like this. And so I decided to go for it. And it's been an up and down road, but I'm glad that I went for it. And I appreciate everyone's support. So there's a few other things you can do if you want to support me in this podcast. You can go to DennisAnyone.net and leave a tip in my virtual tip jar. You can also become a subscriber to my spin-off podcast, Dennis Hensley's Happy and Gay. I do that on both Patreon and Substack. It's the same content on each site, so whichever you prefer. It's $5 a month. I do an episode every week, and I talk about happiness and what helps me achieve it, what I've learned about the science of happiness and things like that, along with creativity and pop culture stuff as well. So learn about that at Patreon or Substack, Dennis Hensley's Happy and Gay. And I enjoy doing those episodes, and I've been inching up in subscribers, which is very nice. So thank you, everyone. And finally, I'm part of the DNR Studios family. So if you want to get my podcast earlier, you can become a subscriber, and you'll get my show earlier and all these other great queer shows. So go to dnrstudios.com to learn about that. All right, that's all the plugs. Here now is my interview with Stephen Rains about his book, Outliving Michael. Joining me now from Los Angeles, it's Stephen Rains. His new book of poetry is called Outliving Michael. Stephen, you're like a returning champion because I've had you on before, because you're my friend, and also I love your work. And this book especially, you know what I wrote down like near the end, because I made a lot of notes. I wrote, everyone deserves to have a book like this written about them. And like, what a tribute to your friend. So congratulations. I just thought it was beautiful. There's just times where I'll like on my notes, I'll be like, damn, I wrote down stunningly beautiful. Like this is what it says in my notes, in green highlighter. So congratulations. And I'm excited to talk to you more about the specifics. But how would you describe the book to someone that knew nothing about Michael or what you were writing about?
You know, the book is described as a memorial memoir in poetry. And it, you know, although the thing is like, in some way it's a biography too, you know, that like I'm talking about Michael's life, but I'm also talking about my life, the intersection of our lives, and what it's like to outlive a dear friend.
Right. And someone you saw as a mentor, someone that you saw as who was older than you. So you always looked up to who, and now you've passed him in terms of life on this earth.
I have, and that was kind of shocking, that realization of I have now outlived him. I'm older than Michael ever was.
Yeah.
And that is in itself shocking.
So describe for the listeners who Michael Church is or was.
Michael Church was a friend I'd met when I moved to Naples, Florida in 1994. And I'd heard his name long before I had met him socially. He had a drag persona by the name of Blanche. And Naples, Florida only had one gay bar, which was called The Galley. Also, a little bit further north was another bar called The Bottom Line. It was more of a club. And Blanche performed at both of those. And so not only was Michael known for being Blanche, but also because he was a barfly and incredibly witty and fun, and people adored him.
He had a kind of anti-Mame quality to me in the book, or a Sally Bowles, like this larger-than-life character that whisks the young, impressionable, young man, wide-eyed young man into this world, right? Like this sort of live, darling, that kind of thing. That's kind of what kind of came through a little bit in terms of your dynamic together. Does that resonate? Does that sound accurate?
It is accurate, and he would absolutely love that description of him. I was out at a young age, but hadn't consumed a lot of like gay cinema or old school gay cinema. And I remember he called me and I was in the middle of watching Anti-Mame. And he said, "How far along are you in it?" And I told him the scene, and he said, "That movie is top drawer." And he said it more than once before getting off the phone. And of course, then, 5 minutes later is when the expression top drawer comes out in the film.
Right.
He loved that film. He also loved Elizabeth Taylor films.
Yeah.
Which he said were one of the few films he would watch more than once.
He is quite a wit, and clearly he has this drag persona. Did he ever long for a more creative life than he was living? Or was he, because he worked as a travel agent, did he like what he had going? Because he's so funny.
Yes, he was incredibly funny. He started off as an actor and as a singer. He did plays. I know that he was the lead in a performance of Cabaret. I do have a recording of him singing from Pippin.
Yes, one of my favorites.
And he, from New York, moved to Naples. And I think that's when his life as a travel agent began. Doing drag, though, he would only periodically lip sync. Most of the time it was live.
Yeah.
But he would be live in drag. And that was its own kind of level at the time of drag. This is drag in the early 90s.
Right. Yeah. Before drag became cool. It didn't really become cool or like, I remember there was a time, it was when Logo first launched. And I was a creative person trying to make things happen on TV. And people were like, there's this new gay channel, but here's their directive, no drag. Like there was this thing of like, we're trying to be respectable gays or something. There was this vibe. Cut to RuPaul saves their ass a few years later with Drag Race. But it was a different time. Like now drag queens are seen as kind of deities and they're mainstream celebrities. But back then it was a different vibe for sure.
Yeah, and also in terms of dating a drag queen was something else too. Like they were great to entertain us at the bar, but in terms of being close friends with or definitely dating, it was considered lesser than, or it wasn't like it is today.
Yeah. What was your first meeting with Michael, apart from seeing him perform in drag? Do you remember your first kind of encounter?
It would have been in groups at the bar. I had a fake ID. So right. I was one of the youngest people in the bar. I do remember the first time we hung out one-on-one. And this is also when meeting up with someone was an affair in terms of like exchanging numbers and making a plan, whether right. that was just voicemails and, answering machines is what they were called then. So we met up at the bar, and it was probably the first time I had a White Russian, which was his drink of choice.
What is a White Russian? It's vodka and something, right?
It's like milk and Kahlua. I don't know. It's a milky drink.
Okay.
And I only drank them with him. I haven't had a White Russian since Michael passed, actually.
Wow. That was his thing, the thing you do with him. Yeah.
Yes.
I texted you this morning and I said, would you read some of these poems because they're so beautiful? And would you be okay with doing that?
Sure, I would love to.
Okay, I wrote down a few, but you may have favorites that you would think. But I wrote down Sting on page 20.
Yeah.
Because it gets it that you were sort of really coming of age around the time that you met him. Like you were young and you were trying to find your way. And I think this poem kind of captures that. And you had feelings about older men that he had to sort of changed a little bit. So yeah.
I love that you got that and you saw it. Yeah. I was 18, and there's a culture and a community I wanted to be a part of in some ways, but also a culture and community that scared me.
Yeah, for sure.
And he was a part of that. He was a part of that community, but also, helped me embrace it. So yeah, I'd love to read this poem.
Okay, good. Yay.
Sting. 1. I spent my childhood running away from bees in the backyard, feared every sight or mention of them, or the stories of someone dying from a sting. I, having never been stung, worried that I might have an allergy. It was only much later when I read about bees dying in droves that I worried about them. By that time, I was a gardener, understood their purpose and power. 2. I was picking plums in Natalie's yard. Bees buzzed around my outstretched arm. I remembered they used to scare me. The overripe plums would slip off, and the bees swarmed around each picked plum. We had so much in common, wanting the sugar. 3. I think back on how scared I was of being gay, of gay men. There were, after all, the men who trespassed, as if my young body was theirs to forage. I was not ripe or willing, but they took anyway. Then, when I was 14 in a discount clothing store, I saw 2 men with teased hair, cackling at each other's jokes, hands flitting as if they were waving off bees. I browsed a nearby rack to watch them. I watched their confidence, joy, and what I thought they must be doing in bed together. I didn't want to be them at all, yet I knew I was. I went to gay bars long before I should have, a fake ID getting me into the door, and all the older men swarmed around me. 4. Years later, when I met Michael, he was drunk and in drag, sitting at the bar of Naples' only gay club. He tugged at the side of his wig until it slid off of his bald head, leaving a face full of makeup and 2 double pearl drop earrings. Even intoxicated, his wit was quick. I'd feel it sting minutes after a comment. We buzzed around the bar that night, vodka, the nectar we consumed. That night, I knew I wanted to spend every moment I could with him. I had found my queen. 5. With Michael, I began to lose my fear of older men and to let go of the fright accumulated from predators of my past and the media messages about what they carried and passed with their sexual carelessness. They had been dying in droves. Their cum and blood could kill me, like the sting I had always feared.
Oh, wow. See, people, he's just beautiful writing, just vivid and emotional. So Michael was never expressed romantic interest or sexual interest in you. Like it was different from the get-go. He never had that vibe, or did he at one point?
Correct. That was never something between us. And I'm so grateful for it because I think it would have complicated the relationship, or that I might have thought there was an ulterior motive. And there's such a sexualizing of younger men. And it was nice not to have, and I was a recipient of that and a grateful one.
Right.
At many times. I was glad that wasn't there with our friendship.
I think it's a relief, right? Because I think we all remember being young and being in situations like that. I mean, it's not because we're also fabulous or whatever. There's a thing about youth. And when you find someone that's like, oh, this is a safe place. This is a safe person. You can let down your guard and be friends with them. It opens a door.
Yeah, what I needed at that time was love and to be seen and appreciated and guidance. I didn't need another sex partner.
Yeah, you were good. You were good to go on that.
There were plenty of those, yes.
Yeah. Michael worked at Studio 54, which I find fascinating, right? before you met him?
Yeah, it's part of his kind of wild history that was so fascinating for me to hear about. His father did the books for Steve Rubell and got Michael a job when Michael was underage being a bottle boy. And Michael would famously quip, I think I picked up 2 beer bottles that entire summer.
Yeah, that's what he said. He was too busy doing other things. He's so funny. Yeah, you open with a Tennessee Williams quote. What are those called in books where there's another quote that's before the book actually starts?
The pull quote.
The pull quote? That's what it's called?
Yeah.
I have 2 books. I didn't ever do that because I never got it. And I also felt like I'm not artsy fartsy enough to know what to do with that or whatever. But talk about why you chose that one. And was it an obvious thing when you knew, oh, this will resonate?
Yeah, I love a pull quote. I think it's a way of setting the tone.
Yeah, well, it's also saying like this is part of this tradition. It's sort of like it sort of connects things to the past and the future in a way.
Yeah, and that kind of lineage. And it's a quote from The Milk Train Doesn't Stop Here Anymore, one of his plays. And, Tennessee Williams grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, like myself. And the quote, the first time I read it, in fact, I am right now, I got teary-eyed over it. And it's that death is one moment and life is so many of them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. I had a guest on this podcast who you may be familiar with, Mark S. King. He's a writer and a big HIV advocate. And he had a quote where he said, life is short and it also takes a really long time. And I'm like, yes, it does. It absolutely does.
Mark is such a powerhouse. I love his book. I love his journalism.
Yeah. His stuff lands. It's not pretentious. Yeah. Yeah. I really enjoyed our conversation with him. And I think about that life is short and it also takes a really long time. A lot. You write about how you weren't a great caretaker for him in the end, that you were young when he started to get sick and stuff.
Yeah, I was young and I wasn't, and I'm sorry that I wasn't the best of caretakers. I wasn't terrible. I wasn't as skilled as I would be now. I think also Michael didn't really like that restructuring of our friendship either. He actually wanted to be alone most of the time. He was suffering from dementia, would get frustrated easily, and he was very irritable towards the end.
Yeah.
He had a lot of troubles with his phone. I think I mentioned it twice because it always stands out to me thinking about Michael towards the end, how much he hated his new cordless phone. The phone he was used to using died.
Yeah.
And he kept trying to find a phone that was easy for him to use. And at one point in time, he even threw the cordless phone in the front lawn.
Wow, he'd had it with that phone. I know, and it's so interesting to think about now because we're all on, our iPhones and smartphones and stuff, but that wasn't how we communicated before. We didn't have that.
No, and it's something that happens as we age, that sometimes technology proceeds. There are a lot of people who their parents, their iPhones are the thumbprint iPhones, and like, how do you move your parent to a new technology?
Yeah.
And the same is true of people suffering from dementia or memory loss issues that, I'm sure it was so devastating for him to have everything he knew kind of slip away.
Yeah.
But also he was a character. He was an entertainer. And also it was hard to see when he was no longer that fixture at the bar, the people who stuck around and the people who didn't.
Right. I think you see a lot. And it wasn't just him. There was a whole lot of different people. You talk about him having a dead table. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about the dead table.
That story. But no, Michael had so much loss in his life that he had a table that he called the dead table, which was portraits of all of his loved ones who had died of AIDS.
Yeah. And they were together. Yeah, he had a sort of, he was so clearly deeply feeling and also really funny and had like this gallows humor. There was a line that you write about where some filmmaker was talking about how he had given the world a gift or something. Tell me about that, because the line is classic.
There was a filmmaker who was so pretentious and talking about like their film, and they were like, this is my gift to the world. And I remember Michael turning to me and said, I really hope he kept the receipt.
Like, that's such wit. There's a point.
Also, in terms of the reason I laughed at the dead table story is because I was running late to his house once. I was probably like an hour or so late. In my defense, I was commuting 2.5 hours at that time. And I didn't notice it at first, but he put my photo on the dead table.
Oh, because you were dead to him? Because you were dead to him because you were late.
Because I was late.
That's so funny. What did you have to do to get it back to a normal table?
Once I laughed at it, then
he was good and he moved it.
Yeah, then it was put back.
Mean, he feels like a sitcom character in a great way. Like, just everything was funny and like sight gags and like all of it.
Yeah, he was so incredibly exceptional, and I was so fortunate to have him in my life, and so many people feel that way. And it's also, though, he's not, he wasn't well known,
right.
And a lot of us have people in our lives. I'm so touched that you started this interview talking about how everyone should have, everyone would be honored to have a book like this. Oh my God.
Yes, everyone deserves it, because it's just a life with flair and fun or whatever. But he's a regular person too, like all of us. You write about finding something that you felt like gave you permission to write this book as you were kind of going through old things and thinking about it, right?
Yeah, when I was caregiving for him, and it was a few months that his sleep was really erratic. He had a guest bedroom that he nicknamed Steven's room long before I became his caregiver because I would stay with him so often. But I remember waking up one morning and there was a note that he left for me. On one side, he wrote the names. He saw a documentary about poets and he thought I should look up these poets.
Right.
Then on the other side of the note, he wrote, I have 2 subjects for you to write about. Me, of course, and me.
Right. And you kept that and you have it as the front of the book in his handwriting.
I do, yeah.
But when you were going through things, you came across it again. And did you remember that you had it? Or was that sort of like, oh, I forgot he wrote this?
I completely forgot he had written it. I was, with anything, when writing personally about someone, especially if they've passed, it's not as if I was going to be able to get permission from Michael to disclose some of the things I did about his life. And it feels a little bit invasive. I think most people who are close friends with artists kind of know what they're getting into on some level, but also, have concerns. And I was, the book was coming to a completion, and I was unsure about it. And then when going through papers, I had found this note that Michael had left, and it was such a lovely permission, and I was able just to exhale and, and of course it was said with humor,
right.
Which is totally Michael's humor,
right?
That I also share, and maybe we did have similar senses of humor, but my humor was definitely shaped by him.
When you realized you wanted to write about him, were all of these stories sort of pretty easily accessible in your memory, or was it sort of like one thing would lead to, oh, and then I forgot about that, and oh, wait. That would a lot of things come back to you that you'd sort of forgotten about?
Yes. I did keep a journal at that time, and I actually didn't go through my journal to mine this, anything for this book. That would have been actually too painful for me. It was nice that I was able just to reflect on the things that stood out to me.
Wow. It's interesting that you didn't look in your journal. Because all of that stuff would have been in there, or different things, I assume.
Maybe different things. I do remember writing about how difficult the caregiving component was.
Yeah.
And, I also, though, I'm significantly older. And so to look back with the lens of today and to reflect on who Michael was, I like that version of Michael too.
Right. As opposed to, just going back and seeing the day by day of it unfolding. Yeah.
Yeah, I did encounter a photo where he was wearing glasses.
Yeah.
And I'd forgotten the final years that Michael wore glasses. You know, like it's those things that you forget. Like when I would, you know, see him out, he never had glasses on, but at home he would wear glasses.
Yeah. There was one poem that I remember you writing about, and I think he was starting to get sick, and you had spent time with him, and it hadn't been the most meaningful time, but then he had a hookup, and he was so excited that he had this random hookup, and you were a little bit like, well, where was all that energy when I was there, like kind of vibe. So there was those dynamics that I thought you were quite honest about, like the resentments, the petty day-to-dayness of friendship, right?
Yeah, and you were such a good reader. I really appreciate.
Thank you. We could just go through all the highlights if you want. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a poem that
Do you want to read it?
Yeah, I would love to read that poem. Especially I think it might be the only Christmas poem I've ever written because Christmas is featured in it.
Okay, cool. And I noticed that you don't have titles on your poems. Was that a choice for this book, or is that always how you do it, or it just seemed like the right thing for this one?
This collection and A Quilt for David, I chose to go without poems.
Or without titles?
Without titles. That would be a book, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It says Stephen Rains, without poems. And you open it, and it's just blank pages and a Tennessee Williams quote. That's it. That's all you can. That's your next book, Stephen. And people won't notice until they get home if you do it right. If you throw a good enough party, no one will notice until they get home. Or they'll just think it was their copy that there was a mistake, right? That's the next book. It's the next move. Then you move to a new city and do it again. Start all over.
And then I want pretentious people to leave reviews on Amazon, acting like some, this
it was so deep.
Exactly. Before inspiration. This is before inspiration. The pages are.
Yeah.
I didn't think that there's anything a title. There was no labor that a title was going to do. It wasn't going to set the stage. Right. It's all, all these.
And in a way, it's all one thing.
Yeah.
It's not like, I was writing about summer and now I'm writing about college. This is all of a piece. So I think it makes sense.
Yeah, and there are 2 poems in this collection that do have titles, and that's because they just in my mind stood out, that they were a little different than the previous poems. Yeah. And one was Sting,
which we read.
So
this is the other one one of the other ones that I mentioned. Yeah.
I was invited down for Christmas, the 3rd we spent together. That year he hosted a dinner with family and friends. When walking from the kitchen to the living room, Michael plucked the mistletoe off the ceiling, fashioned it onto his belt buckle, and walked around the party. The last time he came to visit me, he spent that last night and all of the next day in bed. This had become commonplace. His losing steam. I packed for him and put the bags in his car. He left, promised to call me when he got home. 2.5 hours. After 2.5 hours, I called, got his voicemail. His call came 2 hours later. He was beaming on the other end. Driving down I-75, he had been cruised. A man in a blue pickup had signaled to Michael with his rainbow sticker on his car. Michael followed him off the ramp into an unnamed Florida town, and they went to the stranger's small apartment and had sex. Michael said, "With my baseball cap on, I don't think he realized how old I was." I didn't ask Michael whether he told him about his HIV status or if a condom was used. What I didn't say was how I resented that Michael could rally for this stranger, having lain lifeless during his visit with me. The thrill in his voice kept me from saying anything, and this was the last time I heard him happy. He was electric, energized by the attention, the spark of their bodies against each other. He was, once again, the object of desire. Mistletoe hanging above his penis. Michael was the joke at that Christmas party. He never told me of the times he was rejected for his status, but it must have happened. What was below that mistletoe back then was a dangerous thing.
Wow. Right. And then he calls you and he's like, this thing happened. And you're like, great. Yeah. The mixed up emotions it's just beautiful. And also he was going through things that you would later go through in life, relationships. And so you were kind of watching from your vantage point, kind of how to be an older gay man or, go through these different things. And you write about one of his boyfriends, Ramon, hitting him and how he reacted to it. And it snapped him out of something. Like, it's kind of like we always want to say that's never the answer, that violence is always bad. No, no, no. And in this case, he's like, if you told me that I would stay with somebody, I wouldn't have believed you or something. Talk a little bit about Ramon in that moment. Because I thought, Stephen's getting all of these lessons from somebody that's a few years ahead of him going through things, right?
Yeah, just what you talked about that poem, like holding the complexity of like being excited for my friend, but also feeling kind of personally hurt.
Yeah.
Especially at a young age where we tend to kind of relegate things to all good or all bad and not really, it's so hard to, for some adults, it's hard to sit with complexity. And, Michael was breaking a narrative for me at that time. Like you said, there's the thing of like, oh, if you're ever hit.
Get out, whatever. There's all the things we say around different situations, and then there's what happens.
Yeah, and what was happening is that Michael was young at that time and dramatic and driving erratically on the road, and Ramon said, pull the car over. And when they got out of the car, Ramon hit Michael. And, I so wish I could do this story justice because I still remember how exciting it was when Michael was telling me, but Michael talked about how it really snapped him out of it, that he, I think there was something about that offered Michael containment, as opposed to being kind of this like dramatic queen and kind of living the scene out of a movie. And this was kind of more real life. And, Ramon actually was one of Michael's great loves.
Yeah. But it was a moment where you just had it. And he needed, it's just interesting the way you write about it and the upshot of it, which is Michael was like, I probably had it coming a little bit. Which is not what you think.
No, that was exactly
like.
The way he saw it. And, part of it is that complexity. Do I think that people should hit their partners? Of course not.
Yeah.
This is way before Google. It was so important for me. I always wanted to know and be friends with people who knew more than I did.
Right.
And I was also socializing in environments, thanks to my fake ID, with people who were older than I was.
Yeah.
So I could learn so much about life, interactions, and I needed that kind of education because in some ways I was really sheltered growing up or not living. I wasn't living in an environment where, I was getting the kind of modeling I wanted as an artist.
Yeah.
And creative person.
You write a bit about your family and how Michael sort of became a kind of chosen family to you and gave you something that you didn't get at home growing up. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think in therapy they would say like I was Michael mirrored me. I came from a family with such critical parents.
Yeah,
not only critical, it was being so misunderstood, and my parents not having an interest in the arts. And I remember so many arguments and actually even beatings surrounding my lack of ability in sports, and I didn't have an interest in sports.
Yeah.
And so it's, coming from an abusive household and leaving at such a young age and then encountering someone like Michael, who was so nurturing and fun and such a great friend and such a great character. I mean, he kind of, maybe the magic that people feel in adolescence, I actually felt when I was with him.
Yeah, I wrote this down. Michael seemed like he loved you the way you were. Like he didn't seem to want you to be something else, right? He just saw you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yes, he did. And he, part of his I jokingly say, like, one of my love languages is talking smack, like I love, like playfulness and humor. And so Michael would poke fun at me. And generally, though, it was when I was taking myself like way too seriously.
Right.
But yeah, no, he really did appreciate me. Although that's not uncommon right now in my life. And I imagine you might feel the same way in your life, that like as adults, we do start surrounding ourselves with people who do love us for who we are. And this was just one of the first times I fully felt that. And it was so meaningful from another gay man.
Yeah. And it seemed like he supported you as an artist. Like he would talk to you about poems and you should know about this poetry and right. Like he sort of was like, go for it. Do this stuff. I believe you can do it.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was a reader. He loved Andrew Holleran's work.
Right.
And it's, Andrew Holleran comes up, I think, 3 times in this book because he was such a, his work was something that we talked about together. I was introduced to Andrew Holleran's work through Michael.
Right.
Michael's introduction was Dancer from the Dance. And that it was meaningful to him. And Michael devoured every Holleran book as soon as it came out.
Yeah. And going back to your family a little bit, there's a poem about your grandmother that has resonance with Michael. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because this was after he had passed already.
Yeah. So I do the audiobook for this collection. And I had to read it 3 times because I kept crying during the reading of that.
I'm not surprised. That one more than others?
I cried several times, but that was the poem that it kept trying.
Like, we're going to try that again. Yeah.
Yeah. And kept going over it again. And, also one thing about audiobooks is it's sometimes the first time one is reading their work.
Yeah.
When you do public readings, you read things out loud, but this is the first time I'm presenting the work. And so, of course I was feeling emotions when writing the work, but then to revisit it later on in this collection.
Yeah. That probably took you back.
Yeah. Would you like me to share that?
Let's do
suspect it. I can now get through it without crying.
Yeah.
So.
You know what? When you come out without poems, it's going to be so much easier to not cry. I can't wait for that book.
I can't wait for that collection too. And I think it can probably be released very soon.
I'm never gonna let this bit go. I think I'm gonna try to keep it going for years. How's it going? When are we gonna get that book?
I like it. I wonder what the cover should be.
I don't know. I'll think about it. We'll think about it.
I think just like a very stark white with like black lettering.
Yeah.
I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Let me find that poem.
Page 66.
I could tell from our conversations, Michael's mind was slipping. Before our Sunday morning call, I hooked up a recording device bought at Radio Shack. I wanted to preserve as much as I could of Michael. I've only listened to the tape once. Besides the high-pitched squeal, or my nervous laugh, forced good cheer, inane comments, I fear I wasn't giving a scared, dying man what he needed. There were so many things I wanted to say, but didn't know how. When my grandmother was dying, I walked into her hospice room and shared my memories of how I felt loved by her, how she made me laugh, and that my life was better because of her, that I would miss her, and that in big moments of my life I would think of her. I told her everything I wish I said to Michael.
It's interesting that you were able to realize that that's what you did with your grandmother. Did you realize it soon after that, or did you realize it years later in retrospect?
I think that, I think I only had to learn it once. I think I only had to learn that lesson once of when someone is dying, what to say to them.
Right. And you learned it with Michael and you were able to apply it going forward.
Yes.
Still, I would imagine with your grandmother, it's not easy to be that open and to say those things, especially in a family that maybe wasn't that touchy-feely, right?
Yeah. And And also, I think that there's that weird thing about like not wanting to be awkward or not wanting to be uncomfortable. And guess what? The other person is dying. I can handle the discomfort.
Right.
Like it's my feeling of discomfort. And so it's to not share those things is selfish on some part.
Right.
It's some way like we're self-protecting, but from what? And I think that what people want is they want to know that they've mattered, that they've made a difference, that they've, impacted others, and that life was meaningful. And so I think it's a wonderful thing to express to people as they're dying.
Yeah.
Or towards the end of life.
Do you have moments where you feel, Michael? Have there been any parts during this journey where you've had little woo-woo moments or like little moments of grace or coincidence?
Oh, I'm so comforted by any time I remember him. Mm-hmm. That's true of all of my friends who have passed. There are times where it's more of the people we have in common, and some people who I wasn't actually like overly close to, but we shared Michael together. I remember once it was Christmas Eve. This is just within the past 7 or 8 years. I left a Christmas Eve party and I got into my car and I was feeling kind of alone. And I don't know why, but I checked my phone and it was an email from Chuck, who was one of Michael's close friends. And Chuck is actually mentioned in the book. And Chuck had found photos of Michael and he sent them to me. He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry to bother you on Christmas Eve, but I was just going through photo albums and I found these photos of Michael and I thought you would enjoy them." And since Michael and I spent so many Christmases together, it was so meaningful to get those on Christmas Eve.
Yeah. When you looked at the pictures, were you like, "Oh, I remember that"? Were they like, "Oh, I've seen that picture before"? Or was it all kind of like, "Oh, wow, I've never seen this picture before"?
They were all new images to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Speaking of images, there's an image on the cover that I assume is Michael, but we don't see his face. Talk to me about the cover.
Yeah, it's a photo by Erickson Proper, who is a mutual friend of ours. Clearly, after a night of partying, it was a photo that I always liked of Michael. He's sitting on the floor with his back against a couch, and there's a coffee table just strewn with items on it. And
cigarettes, a White Russian, maybe cocaine. Is that cocaine? Also a cassette case, like a cassette tape case, it looks like.
Yeah, and a cigarette box. There are deflated balloons on the floor. It's such a great It's a great after party photo.
Right.
And I had such difficulty. Thankfully, my publisher, Moontide Press, said that I can choose the cover art. And so this was great for me. I'm so particular about covers, and unfortunately, there's so many bad covers on books out there that I loved that I had that. So I was working with a graphic designer, and nothing was landing with this cover. And so I told my dear friend, Darren Klein, that I was having trouble with the cover. And Darren's a visual artist. He had a gallery at one point in time. He works at the Broad. He's,
Right.
And Darren said, why don't you send me the image? Let me look at it. Less than a minute later, he sends me back. He's like, "This is your cover."
Less than a minute later? Wow.
Less than a minute later. I mean, he's such a genius.
Right.
That, he's so visual, and he got it. And so there was something about actually not having Michael's face on the cover. You just see the bottom half of his face. And we're just left with, like, the accoutrement of his life, that the white... And what was amazing is all of these things that are in the poems ended up in that cover image, which is the White Russians, his cigarettes.
Right.
There's a cassette, music. There's his loafers, which there are several poems about loafers that go up. And it does. Erickson says that's not cocaine on the table.
Okay.
I'm pretty certain. it's cocaine
You think
on the table.
Cocaine? I like it.
It's totally cocaine on the table.
Right.
It was Florida in the late 80s, early 90s.
Right.
That's cocaine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you know when a poem is finished?
There's a great quote that a poem is never finished. What is it? No, I can't even remember, but something about like the ink never dries.
Right.
I think at some point in time, it's just purposeful abandonment where you know, like this is the best I can do
right.
at conveying this scene. This is the best.
It doesn't need an extra line. It doesn't need like that's it. You just kind of just keep kind of whittling away, I guess, until you feel like that's it.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, the poems that one writes today would be different, you know, to go back over work. You know, Walt Whitman was famous for doing that with Leaves of Grass, of that he just kept editing, and a lot of people think that he edited the magic out of the poems. That's possible too. You know, I teach writing workshops, and I talk about, you know, with like cake batter or pancake batter, that like the more you stir it, you can actually flatten the cake by doing that. It takes the oxygen out.
Right.
So it is a delicate balance of overworking something or having something be a little unfinished.
A little unfinished. You write about the idea of like he was a mentor to you, but then you're starting to live your years past where he lived. So you kind of lose a roadmap a little bit. Like, oh, I was following his thing. He didn't live this. What do I do what am I supposed to do now? I don't have any role models, right?
Yeah. And you know, someone that I knew so intimately who would share stories, and I learned so much. You know, sometimes he would give me direct advice, but most of it was just kind of, you know, learning from his life experience and his stories. And there was so much I admired about him. So yeah, what does life look like when one's lifespan surpasses that of their mentor? Yeah.
I guess we ran out of the roadmap, so we have to figure it out. Yeah. We have to. Did your relationship with Michael affect the way you looked at younger people? Would you try to pay it forward in a way when you would meet somebody that reminded you of yourself?
Yeah, I, for years, purposely taught writing workshops to queer youth groups. And I did that across the country at a time that, you know, I wanted people to connect with writing and, you know, queer literature. And, you know, that was kind of like my way of mentoring. Yeah. And sharing that with others. You know, I still have a lot of friends that are, you know, a little bit older than I am. Right. Or around my age. I actually don't have that many younger people in my life.
Right. Yeah. I noticed in the beginning there's a rubbing of Michael's gravestone, and you have a project called The Gay Rub, which we may have talked about before on this podcast, but I think it's really cool. Talk about what that is, and where is Michael's grave at? And you went and did this.
Yeah, so it's the Gay Rub is a collection of rubbings of queer landmarks all over the world. Currently, there are over 450 rubbings of landmarks in the collection, and the exhibition has toured primarily at college, universities, and community art centers. And in it, it's for rubbings of notable people. Right. And the previous collection, A Quilt for David, had a rubbing of David Acker's marker. And there's something about this book that feels like the personal companion to A Quilt for David. Right. In A Quilt for David, I spent over, 10 years researching and writing about someone I didn't know. But in this, Outliving Michael, it's someone I did know. This is a more personal story, but there was something about mirroring the visuals of the book that I wanted.
That was nice. Yeah.
Michael's gravestone is in, his marker is in Naples, Florida. And actually, I didn't do this marker. Karen Coors was kind enough to do the rubbing of Michael's marker for me.
Well, I've seen your collection when it was exhibited here in LA, and it's really touching and wonderful. And I tried to do one when I went to Mexico City, there was a famous, there was a sort of gay scandal thing that unfolded, and they have a monument to it now. And my friend Tony, who lives there, who's nice and tall, which is good because it's high up. So you told me, like, these are the materials to take, like this kind of paper and this kind of like charcoal kind of pencil thing. And we go there and they chase us away. They chase us away. They wouldn't let us do it. And so Tony's like, leave it with me. I'm going to try to come back and do it by myself. And he wasn't able to do it either, but we did try. But I really wanted to get that rubbing for you. It was a cool story in Mexico City about this raid that happened in this party. And like, it was a whole thing. And there was a TV movie about it that they made for Netflix. And yeah, but no, we tried to rub and we couldn't rub.
Well, you actually were interested in that marker even before that popular Netflix show.
Yeah, no, I think I don't know why I knew about it. Maybe, I don't know why. Because why did I know about it before I went to Mexico City to ask you what materials I needed to get? I don't know why I did that, but I did. But someday it will be part of the collection. But
I want it to be, and I love that you tried.
We tried. Yeah. We were trying to be sneaky and and he even tried on his own without me, and they weren't having it. Maybe if we had, paid him a little bit of money or something, we could have done it. But yeah,
that could have helped. There's something I think very loving about doing a rubbing and spending time. Just even it feels so meditative.
Yeah, thinking about it. Where did that idea come from? Did you invent that? Had you seen them before?
Rubbings have been around for a long time, and it was there's a long history of rubbings. But for me, it was seeing the marker in West Hollywood is for transgender victims of hate crimes.
Right.
And I thought, how many like that are in the world? That's the first. Is there a second? Is there a third? And I thought, what if I started collecting rubbings? It was just this instant thought. It was like, spontaneous combustion of like, what would it be like if I collected rubbings of markers from all over the world and displayed them at once?
And you started doing it. How many do you have now in the collection, do you think?
Over 450.
Wow. Amazing. Yeah. Where do you keep them?
They're in storage right now. Yeah. It's, the one challenge with that project is it's not monetized. Right. So gallery spaces are interested in artwork that can be sold.
Right.
Where the gay rub, they're not for sale. Right. So that's why it's found a home in universities. And I think it's safe for universities as well, because it's not, there's an educational component. It also addresses queer history.
Yeah.
Booklet that goes along with the exhibition. And I like that people get to take this booklet home and read about gay history.
Yeah.
And look people up and learn more about them.
What was the hardest one to get? Did you have to be sneaky with any of them? Because we kind of had to try to be sneaky and we did not succeed.
I have faith that can happen, actually. The James Whale was actually one of the hardest ones. He's
the
here
author. Or a filmmaker.
Filmmaker, yes.
Father of Frankenstein, like Gods and Monsters. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's popular, but he was in a mausoleum that was so hard to get. Like they had such tight security that they would never let me in. I tried 2 different times. And I couldn't figure it out. Like, why do they keep saying no to me? I thought, this one guard is protective. And then I went back later and the other person said no. So I went back home and was like, okay, what's going on? Why can't I get in? Because he's buried in the same place as Michael Jackson.
Wow. Okay.
So that's why there are guards. And so I kept reading online. And so I chose, I was so determined to get this rubbing. So the next time I went, I was wearing a suit. I had rubbing supplies packed into the suit.
Yeah.
And I brought flowers. And I also read, there was a guard. I think it was like every 7 minutes, the guard does a rotation.
Yeah.
So I sat there, and as soon as the guard turned the corner, I pulled out the rubbing supplies, and I was able to get the James Whale rubbing.
You did it sneaky. So the flowers they weren't for the guard. They were to make it to look like you were a mourner with flowers.
Exactly. Yes.
Wow. Well played. Well played.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a poem that you wrote about being in the Berkshires and commemorating Michael. What a wonderful image! Talk about what you did, and then I'll ask you about it, because it's charming and kind of a little bit scrappy.
Yeah. I I think scrappy was all I knew back then.
Right.
Michael's death really kind of like toppled my world in some ways. The knowing that I was losing him, but also that thing of looking at like, what do I want to do with my life? What's important to me? At the time I was a public school teacher, and I found it rewarding to be teaching, but I also didn't really enjoy the job or all the conservative things that went along with it.
Right.
And so Michael was dying. I decided to not do that, to not be in that career anymore, and ended up meeting a guy, and in a very kind of reckless way, I thought, I'll spend the summer with him in the Berkshires because he had a job up there. He had a seasonal job.
Nice.
And we're sleeping on a mattress on the floor. And, I then got a job working at Karpalo, the yoga center.
Okay.
Like I was working at the yoga center that summer. It was just a crazy time, but and so Michael and I would have conversations, and then those slowed down because of his dementia. And so I knew Michael was dying, and his mother left a message on my voicemail, on my answering machine, that I would call in periodically to check in. And I like most people, I didn't know what to do with my grief. And so I just went for a drive one evening.
So the message said that he had passed.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, the message said he had died.
Right.
And then, so I wasn't, by the way, that's a terrible relationship. I was in a totally terrible relationship with this guy, not appropriate for me and at all. So it's not like I was going to seek emotional support from him. So, I just I was alone by myself driving around in my old car, and I didn't know what to do. And so I stopped by Michael's, the craft store that had his name.
Right.
And I bought, and I don't know, I just, was walking around, and there were these like fake jewels, they weren't, just like these like cheap jewels. And I bought, I think 12 of them, 12 packages. And then I went to a nearby river, and I dumped these fake jewels into the river.
It's beautiful. It's just beautiful. Yeah. What do you think Michael would think of the book?
It's a book all about him. I think he would love it.
He'd be into it. Yeah. It's like, you couldn't put my face on the cover, but I get what you're doing. I see the artisticness. There are pictures of him actually in it later. So you can see his wonderful face. I want you to read one more poem, and then I have another question for you. But before that, tell people how they can find the book and anything you want them to know.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you can find books wherever they're sold. On Amazon, you can purchase the hardback. This is my first collection. That's a hardback. And I love that.
I like that.
Yeah. After writing for so long, this is my first. I love it. They also can find the audiobook on Audible that I'm reading. The conversation that I referenced in the last poem about recording it, I actually took excerpts from that conversation, and it's a audiobook extra.
Ooh, I love it.
Yeah, so people can hear Michael and hear parts of that conversation. That was a joy to listen to again.
Oh, cool.
And edit it down so people get a sense of him. So, I feel like on a physical book, there is the image of the cover, and, there's, like you said, a photo of Michael on the inside. And yet for this audiobook, people can get an audio sense.
A taste of him. Well, also something that's beautiful about it is that he wasn't a public figure. He wasn't a big star or something. That he was just a person that made a big difference, that had a unique flair to them and made a difference in your life. And I think that's everybody in some way or another, I think.
In some ways, I like that you said that, because in some ways I think that's true of everyone.
Yeah.
That we could sit and write about just about anyone's impact on our life, any close person to us, any loved one.
Yeah.
And I just happened to, after spending so much time on David Acker, I somehow did this. I actually thought this was going to be a chapbook. I didn't necessarily know that I had enough for a full, I just thought I was writing, and maybe that's what I needed to tell myself.
Yeah.
In order just to start a project, is thinking, this will be a small little project after that big project.
Yeah. And
here
then
we are with
here you are. With a hardback book, no less. But you know what? Without poems is going to be much easier. So you have that to look forward to. Will you read the poem on page 48?
Sure.
Okay.
Is that Daisy?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, this is a good... Now that I'm looking over this poem, I'm like, oh, this is such... Yeah, I'm so glad that you chose this poem.
I've got a sneaky plan for the end.
Daisy was the name he gave his white poodle after The Great Gatsby, but I never recall him talking about F. Scott, only Andrew Halloran. He touted Halloran and Judge Judy, held space for both. His friends were a similar mix, so was his clothing, a mix of Saks and thrift. We ate at restaurants on Fifth Avenue and at Perkins. He served elaborate meals on trivets he made from the continental bath tiles. Michael had feet in both worlds, yet now he's not in any world except my memories and this writing that is neither Halloran nor Shendlin. But the compulsion to write about him, honor him, memorialize him, is the only way I can give back an ounce of what he gave me.
It's beautiful. What did he give you?
Oh, you know, in some ways, he gave me the permission to live the life that I'm living now and love so much. I think that he gave me perspective that I've taken with me. He's given me humor that's helped me survive through so much. I think it feels like what he gave me feels endless.
Yeah. Well, I think that's beautiful. Stephen, about a third of the way through this book, I thought to myself, my friend is so talented. And it just made me feel good and proud of you. So congrats. Everyone should pick up this book. It's beautiful.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me on again. And you're such a good reader and such a good interviewer. And
thank you.
I love that the work resonated with you so much. And, you know, we're talking before my book release party, so that also means that, you know, I haven't talked to many people who read it. You're the third person I've talked to who's read the collection. And so it's really meaningful because, you know, these things are written by myself alone and not being shared. And so to have such a strong response and such insightful comments from you is so meaningful. Thank you.
It's beautiful, and people will be able to connect to it, to their own lives and to the people that they've lost. So it's wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. Thank you again to Stephen Rains. Pick up his book, Outliving Michael. All right, so this happened. This is the first recording I'm doing after the long birthday week of activities that I had. And I talked about that in the last episode. And I did something on my birthday that I've been thinking about ever since. And I think it's a practice I'm going to keep doing, which is, what do you guys do when people are singing happy birthday to you? Like when you're the subject and everyone's singing to you, what do you do? I never thought about it before, really. Sometimes I would look at the cake, or sometimes I might look at people or whatever. But this time I had it happen twice. I got sung to twice. And I made a conscious decision in the moment to look from face to face to face to face as people were singing to me, and try to like take it in and try to connect with the person. And it felt very exposing. It felt a little hokey and woo-woo or whatever. But I made a decision to do that. I don't know. In the moment, I just thought, where do I look? What do I do? And I was like, I'm just going to look at the people and try to take in the love that I think they're sending me. And I did that, and it was kind of powerful, and beautiful and a little uncomfortable, but I recommend it. I think that's a good thing. I should come up with a branding name for that, thing, because I don't know. I'd never heard anyone talk about what they do, for this. So that's what I'm suggesting people do. And, I did it. And then for one of them, a friend of mine had videotaped the moment. It was on Monday night, my actual birthday. And when I looked, and so the video is of me pretty much, watching people and moving from person to person. And, when I looked at it, I was like, oh, wow, that guy looks happy. He looks like he feels good. Like there was an emotion on my face that was positive. And I was like, oh, yeah, that guy looks happy. It's weird. This has been a very stressful year for everybody. And there's been a lot of uncertainty in my own life. And yet when I look at pictures of myself, particularly when I'm out with friends or doing something, I'm like, oh, that guy looks happy. It's weird. It's like sometimes I'm like, oh, there's a lot of turmoil going on. But in these moments, I think I'm kind of happy. Because especially when I'm with people I love or doing something that I enjoy or that I find meaningful. So anyway, those are my tips. I'll probably talk about this on Happy and Gay as well. So because I find it like kind of, I don't know, like intriguing. Like, what is that moment when you look at people and you take in that moment where it's really all about you? It's interesting. All right, enough for this week. I want to get a shout out in for Oscar Rosario. He mixes my episodes. My theme music is by Mark Daniels for Replacement Music. We will catch you next time on Dennis Anyone. Bye.